you for taking the time to watch this video. In this video, I want to discuss the main differences between structural welding and production welding. And I'm going to talk about the pros and cons with both and what I prefer. Now, I've done both. Me personally, I prefer structural welding over production welding. The jobs that I've had doing production welding, it was more like small parts, building small parts, banging out as many parts as you can, things like that. Like, I used to work for this company where we used to build tents for the military, and it was a cool job, but I would just sit at a welding table all day and just bang out all the parts in a jig. So I just put the parts in the jig, weld it out, send it on its way. Now, structural welding, I like structural welding more. It's more like you're welding on I-beams, columns, things like that. Structural welding, like big time stuff, like on houses, buildings, things like that. With the structural welding, it's a lot of movement. You're not sitting down at a welding table. You're constantly moving. And the structural welding jobs I've had, you're not even welding on the table. You're pretty much welding out in the field, or you're welding on some saddles, things like that. Now, the pros and cons with both. Now, people may disagree with me. This is just based on my opinion. So with the production welding,
To me, I feel like time goes by a lot slower. It gets boring because I'm sitting at a table, you're doing the
same thing all day, just welding out. Pretty much, this is the list of parts you need to get done. Just sitting at the table, MIG welding it, MIG welding it, MIG welding it. So I feel like that gets boring. Now, the pros with that though is like jobs that I've worked for doing production welding, they were cool. Like, I could listen to my music, listen to ebooks, things like that, or audiobooks. So that's cool in that sense. The cons of production welding, from what I've seen, and once again, this is just based on what I've seen in my opinion, production welding, they make less money than those who do structural welding. Because I think it's just because of the comfortability. Like, pretty much you're sitting at a welding table all day, or you're at a welding table all day and you're just doing the same thing, banging out parts. Now, structural welding, the pros and cons. The pros, you make more money. I like structural welding because you're constantly moving. You're not in one spot, so time flies by. You don't have time to be sitting and looking at the clock because you're constantly moving. Now, the cons with structural welding, it's hard work. Like, you're constantly climbing up and down. You're out in the field, welding out in the heat, things like that, welding out in the cold, things like that. So that's the main thing. A lot of times too with structural welding, expect to work long hours. Like, when I did production welding, we were welding only like 8 hours. Pretty much a basic work day. Now, when I was doing structural welding, you're scheduled for 10 hours, but expect to work 12, 13 hours, depending on, when we get done out in the field, you know what I mean? So that's the main difference. Those are the pros and cons. I like structural welding. Another thing with the pros is that, once again, you're working on bigger things. Like, you're learning how to build buildings. You're learning how to build, houses, buildings, conveyor belts, systems, things like that. Like, it's a lot. How can I put it? It's very versatile. So your skill set increases greatly. And then, where I was at too was like, you had people who were welders and people who were fabricators. So it's like, the welders would hang out with the fabricators when we had downtime, and you'll learn how to fabricate really quickly. You know what I mean? When it comes to the production style welding, you're not really fabricating. It's jig fabrication, but it's not really fabrication. It's more like, they bring you your parts, you slip your parts in the jig, you tack them, and then you weld them out. Compared to when you're doing Structural welding, you're actually building the parts, fabricating it, cutting it, grinding it, all those different things. So that's the main difference. And once again, I haven't worked for every single production welding job out there. I'm just talking about from my own personal experience and what I've seen and done. I've been welding for about 3.5 years now. I've done both. I've done production welding, I've done structural welding, ornamental, all those different things. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope this information helps you out. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel so I can keep creating more of these videos. Thank you so much for your time. Oh, and one more thing too. If you're an upcoming welder and you're trying to find a good resource book to learn how to weld, what goes into welding, like PPE, things like that, check out my website. It's www.donmillersmobileweldingservices.com. Click on the button that says get my free ebook. Subscribe to get my free ebook. Click on that, and I will email you my free ebook that I wrote so you can have more information about what it takes and what you'll need to get into welding.